You're your own marketer. You're doing everything. You're managing everything. You're your own marketer. To have the energy to constantly talk about your book in a fresh way every time, it takes a lot of motivation and energy to keep that up. And so, there's some weeks where things are going on and I just can't do that much marketing that week. And you definitely see it in your sales if you're not every day. You should be spending as much time marketing your books as you are writing them, in my opinion, if you're an independently published author.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. Here we have our guest for today. Say hello to Rachel. Hello Rachel, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
So Rachel, how did you become a writer?
So it's a very long road to how I became a writer. I studied communications and journalism at university. And when I graduated, I wanted to see the world and I had an opportunity to become a flight attendant. And so I spent some time doing that. And when I got tired of the travel, opportunities kept coming my way that were taking me away from writing. Although I always wrote and I kept a blog going, I wasn't writing in the professional sense until last year.
It was a travel blog?
No, I had a mom blog. So when I became a mother, I started up a mom blog, and it did involve traveling with children, some of the trips and things we did, but it wasn't an international global blog. In the days when I was a flight attendant and a travel agent, those weren't really a popular thing yet. So, when they started coming out, the whole blogging started coming out, I was a young mother. And so I started one of those. But what led me to write my novels was a few events that happened back in 2017. So my grandmother always followed my blog and always, would encourage me and say, when are you going to get back to writing? When are you going to write, a book or write professionally? And I did have something published in an anthology. And so I was still kind of toying. It was still in the back burner of my mind. It was just, there were so many things going on in life. Life was happening that I couldn't just dedicate, or maybe I just wasn't ready to dedicate and have the confidence to put my writing out there. So my grandmother, what happened was she lived across the street from me when I was growing up, and she was a huge inspiration on my life. Well, she had a heart attack and was in the hospital and almost died, but she lived and she came home and she was on palliative care. And I was going over and seeing her a couple times a week. And one of the days she said, I want you to go over to my closet and get that box down. And I said, okay. So I went and got it down, and it had a plethora of her journals, old photographs, love letters, World War II ration cards, just everything from the 90 years of her life she had saved. And there were journals. And she said, I want you to write a story based on my life. And I said, oh, okay.
That's quite the favor.
Yes. I said, well, I think, I think I'll try. And so I started interviewing her and doing research. And a lot of her stories were very grandiose. And so I thought, okay, well, let's see, let me do the research and back up what she's telling me. Like, she met President Roosevelt and there were all these different things and everything was true. She actually led quite an extraordinary life. She grew up during the Great Depression. And her family, they were a regular Caucasian family during the time, but they were migrant farm workers. And they had the idea, her father had the idea he heard about work going on near Nia Bay, which is the very northernmost point of the United States in the state of Washington. And it's a Native American reservation. And so he heard there was work up there. He took the family up there and they asked the Native Americans if they could stay on the reservation. And they ended up staying there for 2 years. And so that was the formative years of my grandmother's life. And it was a very interesting story of how the Native Americans helped my grandmother's family at a time when they were essentially homeless.
Oh, that's very impressive. Right now, are you like a full-time writer or do you do other things?
Well, my husband and I also have a technology business, but the more I'm getting into the writing, I would say I'm 90% into the writing, and just if he needs me, then I jump in and help with something that he needs. But I'm writing for pretty much full time now.
That's nice. Are you like self-published or traditional?
I am a self-published author, and I'm loving it and enjoying it. I have complete creative control over my books. I have 3 now, including the one based on and inspired by my grandmother's story. It is fiction. It's a fictionalized version of what went on in her life. And then I have one because many of the things that led to her to where she was in life impacted my mother and impacted me down the line. And so I ended up, what I started as one project, it was going to be about our whole family, my grandmother, my mother, myself, and how we're all intertwined. It turned into 3 projects. And so that's where I have my 3 books.
That's nice. Yeah, I think writing a memoir is something very personal, so it's very difficult to ask that to another person. So I think it's what the right choice to make like a fiction version.
I agree. And also, I was able to read the first 3 or 4 chapters to my grandmother. She passed away shortly after, only about 6 months after she asked me to do this project, she passed away. So she was able to see that I had started it and gained momentum. And I was able to read the first few chapters to her before she passed away. And so after she passed away, I was really on fire to write this and finish this for her because I felt like it was kind of a last wish. And but then I would run into areas where I just didn't know how they got from point A or to point B. Right. And everyone that was alive during that time has passed away. She was the youngest in her family. So I had to use my creative part of my brain to most logically, how did they get from here to there? And so once I decided to go and turn it into fiction, it gave me a lot more creative freedom. And
did you keep the names? Flowed.
Yes. So I do have the names, and when I hold this up, this is called Every Night Has a Dawn. That's the one inspired by my grandmother.
Very pretty, like the cover.
And then I have so that's like the 30s, 40s through the 1960s, set in the state of Washington and California and Oklahoma. They traveled around a lot during those times. They went where the work was. So then the second book is Twilight's Hidden Truth. This is the 60s, 70s, and 80s, inspired by some things that went along what happened in my mother's life. And then I have my latest novel, and this book just 2 days ago, it's called Twilight's Brightest Star. This is inspired by my life and my time traveling around the world. But this book won a Literary Global Award. Well, it's a finalist. I don't want to say win. For me, it feels like a win because anytime you're recognized, especially as an independent author, anytime you're recognized, it feels like a win.
I actually saw that cover in Instagram once, I think, in an ad.
I am promoting it a lot. As an independent author, you do have to promote. And I've learned as I've gone, I've pretty much taught myself. And there are a lot of good podcasters, like yourself, the podcasts that are put out there. There's so much to learn from and available to us on the internet now. And I thought, let me just try to self-publish this. Let me just see how far I can take it myself.
Yeah. Usually, most of our guests are usually previous clients of Markee Books. So we deal mostly with self-publishing because we do book covers. So when you do book covers and you bring them to a publisher, they usually don't, treat it kindly because they always like to have full control. And so if an author brings someone from outside, you'll see hell run lost.
Mm-hmm. It's true, but I do hire my own editors. So I go through 3 different editing processes. I work with cover designers. I design my own covers, but then I do a mock-up of how I want them to look. And then I send it to a professional because my graphic skills are not to that level. So I kind of have in my mind what I want and get it in Photoshop.
I think the 3 are very good.
Thank you. I like how they flow together, and you definitely can see the vintage historical fiction, and this is more contemporary. So I think my artist did a very good job in bringing to life my idea.
Other than the journals and the memories from your family, were you inspired by another writer while working on this?
I have read my whole life and been inspired by so many authors, not particularly for these projects, but some of the writers that I look up to and that I love their style is Paulo Coelho. I love Anne Rice. I read everything. I love Hemingway. Like, I've always just been a lover of the written word, and I will read any genre. So I'm sure, I feel like when you're a creator, everything in your life that you've experienced, read, movies you've watched, people you've been around, they all kind of combined to help you create your own voice.
I agree. Everything can be used in the end. Just that some people tend to forget that.
They do, and sometimes people will say, "Oh, I think your book sounds a lot like Kristen Hanna's books. And I love her. I think she's a fabulous author as well. I've had my books compared to like Where the Crawdads Sing and a couple of books like that, but I didn't read any of those books until after my books were out. And now I think another one's The Great Alone. Now I read those books, and because when you write a book and you put it out there, a lot of people come to you and say, "Oh, have you read this book?" or "Have you read this book?" It's a lot like your book. Did you read that book before you wrote your book? I'm like, no, I haven't, but I have since read The Four Winds and The Woman and Firefly Lane, and I do see how people would draw those kind of similarities to my books.
I get it. So, how long did it take you to finish your first book?
When I first started the project and decided I was going to write my grandmother's life, and basically to me it's similar to like the Joy Luck Club, how they follow the women, like there's the grandmothers, the mothers, and the grandchildren. That's similar kind of family saga that I was going for, and I was writing it all as one novel. And it took me finish that one novel. I wrote on and off for about 3 years. And then finally, by the third year, I decided I got COVID and I was in my room and I'd watched every TV show that was available. And this was back when everyone was super cautious and we were quarantined for 14 days. I'd watched like all the Emily in Paris TV show, everything. There was nothing left. And I thought, well, I still have 5 days of quarantine left. Like, what am I going to do? And I just pulled my manuscript down and I decided, it was in January, and I decided I'm going to finish this by next year. By next year, I'm going to have this done. And so I started writing every day at that point.
To be surprised how many of my guests had told me, oh, I started writing through the pandemic.
Yeah. It definitely had opened up where before I was fitting my writing around my life schedule. But when that happened, it definitely opened up to where I had all the time in the world to dedicate to my writing. And since that day, this was 2021, this was a couple years ago, I've written almost every day, at least an hour in that last 3 years.
I agree. Usually, I will say 3 will be like a good number, because with 3 you can do like maybe 2,000 words if you are a very focused person, of course.
Yes, for sure. And I plan when I'm going to take breaks. So I try to write every day. And then if I feel a little burned out, I'll plan like, oh, I'm not going to write anything next week. But then on Monday, I'm going to be back writing, because I feel like it's too easy. If you do stop writing, at least for me, if I'm not writing every day, if I take a long break, like a month, it feels harder to get the flow back. So I try not to take too many breaks other than a couple of days, or if I vacation.
Right. Do you like check your word count?
I do like checking my word count. So I try to set like 1,000 words a week for when I'm doing my original outline. So I like to do like a real quick version where I write the story just for myself. And that one I try to really just get the word count and write every day a couple hundred words. Then when I have that complete, and I know it's pretty ugly, I'd be like, I wouldn't want anyone to read it at that stage. But then I go back and I do the outline. Now that I kind of have the beginning, middle, end, and I know the characters and I have sort of a frame, then I go and I do all of the outline, what chapters, how many chapters I want to have, how many words I think it's going to end up being. Then I go back and I do the slower writing of making the prose and making it sound. Now that I know where I'm at, I go back and rewrite it for other people.
Yeah, usually when you learn how to edit one time, you can do it not that difficult the next one.
Yes. There was a big learning curve on my first book, and things I did, I had no process. It was all intuition. I've taken creative writing courses and they were a long time ago, and I really just wrote from my heart. And once I had that first draft done, I did hire a writing coach, and I worked with a writing coach for 6 weeks. And she was very experienced in the literary world, and she's an editor and a writer herself. And that really was one of the best things I did. I highly recommend if somebody has the means to do that, because it really helped me for the next 2 books.
That's actually a very nice advice. Do you have any other advice you will say to new writers starting today?
I would say you have to keep the fire burning inside with a lot of confidence. You have to believe in yourself. You have to be vulnerable and be able to take criticism and listen to others. You have to hire editors, but it takes an incredible amount of self-confidence to create something and then put it out there for others to read and, judge and review. And so just be prepared and do whatever your routines are for building self-confidence. Like you're going to need a lot of it if you're going to publish a book.
Yeah, that's true. Nice.
Thank
So,
you.
how do you feel right now? How is your writing experience these days?
It's been an amazing experience. I didn't start writing these books till after I was 40 years old. And I had these whole other careers and a whole nother lifetime before I actually got serious. I mean, it was always a dream to write a novel. And it was something I always played with, but it was just never something I believed in or had the fire for until my grandmother kind of lit the match. And I've learned so much. And like I said, the confidence has just grown. I've learned to get my confidence from within and not from others. And I think I've set a really good, strong example for my daughters about following your dreams and chasing your dreams. And if you want something bad enough, you work hard enough, you can achieve it.
Right. So you feel you changed it as a person since you started writing?
Definitely. It definitely has changed me. I'm in a lot of ways a lot more vulnerable and understanding of others because I write very emotional books. They're nostalgic and they're fun, but there's a lot of emotion involved in my books.
In what genre would you categorize your books?
So they're like historical fiction, women's fiction, family saga fiction. Those are kind of the three categories that I write in. But because the books are emotional, I have to be open emotionally so that what I'm feeling can be translated onto the pages. So it just made me a much more compassionate person, I believe.
That's nice. So, are you like a outliner, pre-planner? How's your writing routine? I mean,
Yeah, the process. So I guess they call it a plancer. So I don't really plot or set up the outline ahead of time. The story comes to me and I just write. Then when I have the framework, I go back and I get organized. So I have like this creative side to me and then I have a very organized side, but I start with the creative, it's chaos.
okay. That's interesting. Most people prefer to outline to avoid plot holes and stuff like that. Honestly, personally, I do prefer outlines too. For that, I just like organize like this is how these chapters will be called. These are the characters that will be the focus, and this is like a little summary of the events, and then everything else is completely improvised.
Right. Well, I do the improvise and write because when I'm writing, I'm compelled to write and I can't hold it in. And so I am impatient and I just start writing. But once I have about some meat and potatoes to work with, then I go back and I do the organization. And I say, if you write that way, how I write, you do have to go back and fix plot holes. And it does cause some rewriting in certain areas because then once you get organized, you might catch something that, oh, this doesn't fit, or I might have changed something at the end. And you do have to go back and rewrite sometimes, but it just makes the book all the more better. The more rewrites I do, the more refinement the book gets. I feel like the better it is at the end.
It's an interesting way of seeing it. Most people don't like that.
I know. I'm a bit of a rebel. That's pretty much how I am in everything I tackle in life. I'm an intuitive writer, and for me to sit down and plan it all out ahead of time, it just goes against my personality. And I feel like for me, it just kind of constrains my creativity. But I know that's probably how most people write. And I've tried writing that way, and I feel the flow is better with my style of how I do it. And everything works for different people.
Yeah, that's true. One guest told me he just make everything improvised. Literally, he doesn't plan anything. He makes a title and then it flows.
Runs with it.
He doesn't do anything else. So, I wanted to ask, what would you say is the most difficult thing you had to struggle with when you started writing?
I would say, well, for me, the marketing is the hardest part. the marketing, just having to put yourself constantly, and if you're your own marketer, you're doing everything, you're managing everything, you're your own marketer. And so to have the energy to constantly talk about your book in a fresh way every time, it takes a lot of motivation and energy to keep that up. And so, there's some weeks where things are going on and I just can't do that much marketing that week. And you definitely see it in your sales. If you're not every day, you should be spending as much time marketing your books as you are writing them, in my opinion, if you're an independently published author.
Yeah. And it's hard because especially when you have to thinking content for the social media, it's not just running ads. I mean, just with putting some money there, it's all. But when it's to make it more organic, you need to go to the social media, create your character, what are you posting, stuff like that. It's
the whole author platform.
Yeah, it's
to
so
run
complex.
That whole author platform, sometimes it takes more time than my writing. And I like connecting with people and talking about my books, but I'm an author because I want to write. And so hope maybe at one stage I'll be able to hire a marketing company to help me with that.
You could always try doing a hybrid Instagram page about, I met a writer that she just take picture of her cats and then put text from her books over the pictures, and that's all she did on the social media. And basically, I mean, taking picture of a stuff in her life and promoting the books at the same time.
Yes, because you don't want to just every post you do be like, this is my book, buy my book. People don't want to see that. They're not going to follow you if it's completely just sales content. They want to see some of your personal life or behind the scenes writing, or, they want more than just, the marketing. So
some people need to empathize with the writer before reading the books. That's what I was told.
I think that's the way things work now. I don't think it used to be like that. I think it used to be you would go into a bookstore and you would pick up a book and, you maybe notice the cover and then you would read the back. And I didn't know what Anne Rice looked like when I was into her books. Now it's a whole different world with social media, so I think it is a big component.
Right. So, did you do anything in particular when you feel like having writer's block?
Yes, definitely. I like to get out into nature. So I find just forgetting about the book, forgetting about the writing, and just get outside and get into nature and change my scenery, fresh air. I just find that does worlds of good for me, and it helps inspire me.
Are there parks or more mountains close to you that you frequent?
So I'm pretty close to the ocean. So I can go, and I'm being in California. It's a wonderful state. You have the desert, the mountains. I have woods within 15 minutes. I have the beaches within 15 minutes. So Torrey Pines, hiking. There's a lot of hiking around there. So I'm very spoiled if I need a change of scenery. If I'm writing a book about somebody on the beach, I have a beach to go to. And it helps a lot.
Oh, that's nice. Talking a bit about your books, do you have a story of how you named them?
Yes, I do actually. So I was coming up with all of these different names, and I am a music lover, so I am heavily inspired by music. It's always been something I've loved, something I've turned to. It's been like a therapy. Music, I'm a big music fan of all types. And I was listening to a song one day. It was a 80s song, and it's Every Rose Has a Thorn by the band Poison. And I was just listening to it, and it said Every Night Has a Dawn. And I just thought, there it is. There's the title. It just came to me and struck me like that was going to be the name. And so then I also ended up going back and changing all my chapter titles to songs. I had like an aha moment. And so I have each chapter is inspired by a song and named after a song.
Oh, great. So from your series, do you have like a main message that it's in all the 3 books?
Yes, so my trilogy is called The Winds of Change Trilogy, and it's all about survival and revival. and just how things come into our life. We have to survive, and then we come back stronger. So it just, I would say, a very hopeful, because we all have trauma and we all have grief and we all have pain and we all have these things that we're going through, a shared experience in life. And I like to write how people can overcome those things and how they find their happiness and hope and they remain strong during life's challenges.
I like that. Actually, I think like for your books, it's mostly like a type of slice of life, but at the same time with other historical elements. What have you mentioned before? I like that your pick on the genre is so original in that because it's the first time I heard someone like do like this type of books, due to the historical fiction, or you mentioned woman legacy books.
Yeah, women's fiction, and family saga.
And family saga.
So those are the main three categories that my books would fit into.
Yeah, I like that. It's not something you see that much out there.
I think they're unique. Yes, I do. And I'm having some tremendous feedback. So I only published the first book in October of 2023. And I've already won 3 literary awards, and I've been a finalist in 8 different literary competitions, and I have a lot of reviews out there. So all of that is just urging me to keep going. I have a project that I'm working on that is a prequel to these novels.
Well, I was going to ask that if you were working already on the 4th book.
Yes. So I decided once I finished these 3, during the research, I happened to find an ancestor of mine called Captivity. And I thought that is such an interesting, that's like the journalism side of my mind going, like, you name somebody Captivity, there's a story behind that. And this was an ancestor of mine back in colonial times that was born in captivity. And her story inspired, I suppose the author that wrote The Last of the Mohicans used some of her there's a historical record of what happened to this person, and this other author drew from that and drew some of the experiences and put it into The Last of the Mohicans. But my book is going to be from the female perspective, so of what it was like for the mother who was taken. And I'm very excited to write it. It's my most ambitious project yet.
Yeah, it really does. It sounds very interesting. What's your favorite book so far from the 3 you made?
That is so hard. People ask me that. It's like saying, who's your favorite child? But I have to go. I have to go with my original, Every Night Has a Dawn. I have to go with that one because it was magic. Writing it was magic. I had so much inspiration. I was so on fire, and I was obsessed with it, and it was so great at a time when I was going through grief and going through some difficult times to have, like, that book in some way saved me. And so I think my writing has gotten better and better. And if you were to ask a different question, say which book is your best writing, it would be my latest novel. But as far as like the one that, even though it's my first one, it's a debut, this one has my heart. So it's a good place to start.
Yeah, also by the connection with your grandma.
Yes, I feel in a way she lives on in the book. And what I've heard from a lot of the people that read my books is they feel like my family is their family. Like they read it and they say, it reminded me of my grandmother. That's the same things we did with my grandmother. My grandmother used to tell me these stories, and I wish I had all these stories my grandmother told me written down like this. So I think it's a very sentimental book for a lot of people because it brings that feeling of family. And, I hope everyone had a wonderful grandparent that was close with them. Like it's one of the greatest gifts. There's no love like a grandparent's love for you.
So, now that you reach this point, what is like your largest goal or dream right now as a writer?
Oh, I just wanted to be able to keep going. I would like to make enough money to keep going. So in the beginning, when you're a self-published author and you're independent, you're outlaying a lot of money in the beginning you're paying for your own editing, you're paying for your book covers. And, I've been making money on some of my books and putting it back into the next book. So I would just like to keep that flow and just sell more books so that I can keep writing. Because if I'm not selling them, then I don't have the money to pay the editors and pay everyone. So that's my goal.
Hey, and being a writer is like a lifelong job in a way. I mean, there are authors like Danielle Steele that she's like 80 years old.
Yes, she is.
and it's still working.
If we could all have careers like Danielle Still, I would be happy with a career like that. Or
Oh
even,
yeah.
I mean, having a movie made or a series turned out of my, my books turned into a series, I think they would translate really well. So that's another
Honestly,
dream of mine.
when I saw your covers, I thought they looked like movie posters in a way.
Yes, that's what I did. I tried to make them like a movie poster because I feel like reading isn't as popular as going to the movies. The movies are more popular now, and not as many people like to read. And I think people are missing out. They need to, the younger generations. I've had a lot of people say I'm not a reader, but I read your book and I liked it. And what other books can I read that are similar to that? So I think a lot of people who say they don't like to read or they don't read, I just think they haven't found the right book.
And I will say too that you'll be surprised that this current generation has more readers than you might that you'll be surprised. I think that probably 10 years ago, it's as you said that it wasn't that popular, but I think these days I see more activity on the groups and more people engaging.
I think with book talk and book clap and some of the movements, there's Bookstagram. I think a lot of those have brought in a whole new generation of readers. But yes, I think 5, 10 years ago, I don't think it was as popular. So I'd like to see that, continue.
Okay. That you mentioned that you receive many comments and interaction with your readers. What's like your top experience that you never forgot? Something like an interaction with a reader.
So I was in Florida and I was taking my second book had just came out. And so we were just doing some social media photos and a girl came over and she was like, "Oh, are you an author?" And I said, "Yes." And she had read my first book. And so just to get to like meet somebody out in the wild in the random world that has read my book, that was an exciting experience.
That's nice. Yeah, it's always nice to see that someone actually, recognize you out there too. So, do you have like a support network with other writers?
I do have some other author friends that I've met through social media, and we kind of try to hype each other up and promote each other's works. And I have a friend for a while that she's in Florida, and we would call each other and once a week, like kind of do brainstorming together. So I think it's good to have somebody in your career that is more like a mentor and maybe they're 5 years ahead of you. And then to have a friend that is maybe in the same place that you're in. And then to also mentor somebody just starting out. And if you do those three things, you will learn from the person who is your mentor. You can kind of like sort of be support for the one that's in the same place that you are.
And remember the basis too.
Yes, but then when you start mentoring, helping others, you realize how much you know, and and it helps you. All those three things help so much. So I have a small support system, and I think it's a great thing to have.
Oh, nice. So, what do you think is the greatest accomplishment in your career right now?
Right now, so I would just say I finished my trilogy in November, and within
Oh, there's not going to be sequels, just the past prequels.
Well, I finished the trilogy, and then after I finished it, I decided to do a prequel. But the goal in the beginning was to do a trilogy, and so I completed the trilogy. And within 2 weeks of publishing the third book, it was nominated for the award. So that felt pretty good to finish, and then right away have a nomination and get recognition.
Okay. So, how do you stay creatively inspired?
I stay creatively inspired because I've done a lot in my life and I've lived a lot and I've had a lot of life experience in my life. So I've had an interesting life and I draw from all the things from my past. And when I want to write, I just think of stories from my past and pull out pictures, turn on a song, and it kind of gets me, in that writing mode. And then also in nature, also going out in nature and hiking helps. And I devour podcasts. I love, I have several people that I follow on podcasts. I have a person I follow for self-publishing, one for writing, one for work-life balance. So I just try to have a whole schedule of marketing, writing, learning. And if you keep that balance, then I think the creativity flow, will stay with you. When you focus on one thing too much, that's when I notice my creativity. If I'm trying to force I'm going to write all this week and not focus on anything else, that's when I notice that my creativity starts to, run dry.
So, do you have like future plans, like going to an event to promote yourself or a book signing?
I do have some book signings that are in the works. So those will all be available on my website. It's www.rachelvalencourt.com. So I have they're mostly going to be in California, but I'm trying to plan some for Arizona and the state of Washington. So hopefully down the road, maybe I'll be able to do a nationwide tour because my books are set in a lot of different places. So I have my third book's partially set in England, France, and Australia. And then I have my book set in Washington State. I have one set in Oklahoma and California.
Oh, usually people pick New York. They say that in New York, there's a lot of writers' events.
There are a lot of writers' events in New York. And there's a lot in California and London. So we'll see. I'm going to put them all on my website. I'm right now planning my year next year and looking at different options.
Right. Just before the holidays.
Yes, I was just so focused on getting the trilogy out and getting that final book out that I thought once it's done, then I'll start looking at all of my book signings. And I happened to release the book in November, right before the holidays. So I didn't plan a big launch, like in-person launch. I did a virtual launch. And, I had a couple hundred people come to my virtual launch. So we're in an amazing time where we can all connect like this from across thousands of miles.
Oh, I got an idea. Maybe for Women's Day, you could like promote like a special price for the whole series.
That'd be good. Or I could give away one of the books for free for one day. I like to do things like that,
I like to make offers for special days too. But I mean, yeah, it's already a little late for Black Friday.
Yeah. I always try to do, I look up what holidays today. Sometimes it's like World Author Day or it was like Nancy Drew's birthday, things like that. I'll look up anything literary related. Hemingway's birthday. Oh, let's do a 99-cent sale for Hemingway's birthday.
Talking about that, I remember a question. Are you planning like a new series after this prequel, like something different? Maybe try other genres like mystery, suspense, stuff like that?
I do. I have another genre I want to write. I don't want to say what genre it is yet, but this is going to involve around the 27 Club. So James Dean, Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin. I have an idea on a series that I want to create and turn into fictionalized stories with everyone who was in that 27 Club, because I've always have been fascinated by that. And that's actually what I wanted to write before I got caught up on these books. But now that I'm on these historical fiction, I at least have one more book in this. So that 27 Club series will probably not happen for like maybe another 2 years.
Right. Can you tell us like the platforms we could like find your books?
Yes, so my books are available online at almost all booksellers. So you can find them at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I'm in some Barnes & Nobles in person in California, but not nationwide. But pretty much all the booksellers, I think Walmart even has my books on there. And I'm trying to get them into the libraries also, like the online libraries, so you can just download them, like Libby and those places.
You mentioned your website. Do you have other social media where people like could engage with you and see your activities?
I do. I have several. So I'm most active on Facebook. So if you just go Facebook, Rachel Valencourt, you can find me there. And I have a pretty active, we call ourselves the page turners. So I have a pretty active group there where I do trivia and I do behind the scenes. I also have a newsletter. I'm active on TikTok and Instagram, Pinterest. I'm pretty much on every social media, but the main ones that I'm posting daily is Facebook, Instagram, and I would say Clapper and TikTok are like, it's a lot just trying to keep 3 social media is like posting daily on 3. But I do weekly on TikTok and Clapper, weekly videos. And I think I have a few things on YouTube as well. It's all
nice.
Rachel Valencourt. So
Well,
everything's Rachel Valencourt.
your name is pretty unique, to be honest.
Thank you.
I mean, it's difficult to forget the last name.
Yes, so that is a pen name, and it comes from it's a family name. It was one of my grandmother's maiden name, so I just decided to take that to honor her because my original name was already taken by another author.
I get it. I made my pen name my mother's last name before marriage because
Yes.
I thought it sounded more interesting.
Yes. It's good. You want something people can remember. So I hope that's a memorable name. And I've become Rachel Valencourt over the years. Over these 5 years, you kind of become, it's like an alter ego. But I've kind of become that person now.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much. I think that's all for now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me. And I just love talking about books with you.
I'm happy that you enjoyed the experience.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming to another episode of Writing Inspirations with Markee Books. And thank you, Rachel, again for coming and joining us today. Like, subscribe, and see you again in another episode. Bye.